All right, we are continuing in Genesis with the life of Abraham. Last week we went through chapter 13, and in that chapter we see where Abraham leaves Egypt. Actually, they request him to leave Egypt, and he does because of what he did there that could have been catastrophic for all concerned. But in chapter 13, we see where Abram, which is his name at the moment, and Lot have a lot of cattle. They are very wealthy, and it's not until this point in time that we actually are aware of it, because it doesn't really tell us until chapter 13 that there's any more than just a handful of people going. But evidently, there's a lot of people, and there's a lot of cattle, and they're very wealthy, and they have men who take care of the cattle. Both of them have men, and they're in a region where it just naturally cannot support that many cattle. And so there's contention between the men, Lot's men, and Abram's men. And it's just something that could get out of hand. Not that Abram and Lot were at odds with each other, because they weren't. But there was some friction going on between the men taking care of the cattle and all the livestock. And of course, it would be, if a man is hired to take care of the livestock belonging to Abram or Lot, he would understand, this is my duty. I don't care about the other cattle belonging to the other person. I don't care about them. This is my duty. And I've got to make sure that these cattle are well fed, well watered, and I can't be concerned about the others. So, because there was contention, and Abram and Lot do not want that to continue, they've got to separate. And they've got to put some space between them, because they are becoming very prosperous with a lot of cattle. And so Abram gives Lot the choice. You take the left, I'll go the right. You go to the right, I'll go to the left. You just decide where you're going. I will go the opposite direction, and we'll put space. And so we see, and this is important for this chapter, coming into chapter 14, that Lot looks at the plain of the Jordan, and he sees that it is well watered. He sees that it is a very green place. And he says, okay, I'm going there. All right. He's given first choice, so he's going to take the better choice. That's what he's going to do. And Abram, okay, yeah, go, if that's where you want to go. And we see where Lot is going to, we go to verse 11. Let's just go to Genesis chapter 13, verse 11. Then Lot chose for himself all the plain of Jordan, and Lot journeyed east, and they separated from each other. Abram dwelt in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelt in the cities of the plain, and pitched his tent even as far as Sodom. And that's going to affect his life now. That's going to affect his family now. He's gone even as far as that city. Verse 13, but the men of Sodom were exceedingly wicked and sinful against the Lord. So we have now an introduction to this city. And we're going to get further introduction into this city. But the first introduction is that it is in a well-watered, grassy area. Sodom is, because that's what Lot chose in this plain of the Jordan, and that it is a wicked place. But Lot is pitching his tent as far as Sodom. He's getting closer and closer to Sodom. And very soon we're going to find him inside Sodom. Now, we come to chapter 14. 14 records for us, this is the first battle recorded, or war, this first conquest recorded in the Bible. And I'm not suggesting at all, matter of fact, I'm suggesting the opposite. This is not the first battle, war, or conquest ever. Even this side of the flood, I don't think that it is. I don't think that for a second. But on the other side of the flood, I think that the other side of the flood had its own history. It wasn't just people living, primitively and that kind of separated from each other, and there were never any contentions. We know that's not true. I think there would have been massive wars on the other side of the flood. This is just the first one recorded in the Bible because it's important. Those others they don't matter so much for what we need. What we do need, God tells us concerning that world in Genesis chapter 6, how wicked and violent it was prior to the flood. Now, come to this side of the flood, there's still wickedness. There's still, men still gravitate toward idolatry, leaving the truth, leaving God. They gravitate toward Him, or away from Him, I should say, toward idolatry. Men are just going to do it, and men are always going to be wicked. And here is something we need to know, is that when you leave God, you cannot, and take a society with you. If society as a whole leaves God, you cannot expect it to be godly. You can't. There are religions that are out there, world religions that are out there, that pretend to be peaceful. They never have been peaceful. And I don't mean just Islam either. I mean Buddhism and Shintoism and Taoism and all kinds of isms, that they pretend to be peaceful, placid, live and let live. I mean, that's a great philosophy, and perhaps that is a philosophy that is espoused, that is taught, but that doesn't mean it is followed at all. So, we come to Genesis chapter 14, and we see where there is conquest going on. Conquest in the ancient world. Verse 1, Genesis 14. And it came to pass in the days of Amraphel, king of Shinar, Arioch, king of Elasar, Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, entitled king of nations, that they made war with Bera, king of Sodom, Bersha, king of Gomorrah, Shinab, king of Admah, Shemimber, king of Zeboam, and the king of Bela, that is Zoar. So we have these four kings that actually are coming from the west. They're coming from the east. These four kings coming from the east, and they're going to go against these 5 cities that are here in the plains of Jordan. And they are along the Dead Sea coast is where they are. What today is referred to as the Dead Sea. And we here is this first bit of conquest. Chapter 3. All these joined together in the valley of Sodom, that is the Salt Sea. Now notice, this, I'm reading from the New King James, and it puts this last part, that is the Salt Sea, as a parenthetical statement. It's in between parentheses. Okay, as in a phrase or a sentence of explanation. And there is a reason for that. There's a reason why the translators put that into parentheses, because in your ancient Hebrew, they didn't use parentheses. But this is one of those statements, and we do find this in the book of Genesis, one of these statements that makes clarification for the readers who are going to be reading this beginning in Moses' day. That Moses is writing this centuries after the fact. Even for the life of Abraham, Moses is going to be somewhere on the order of 500 years after Abraham lived. Or I should say, even after Abraham died. He's going to be some 500 years later that he comes around. And all of this, of course, is inspired of God. God giving us the understanding of things that we could not know about. And we made mention of it last week, just briefly mentioned this week. When God does things like this and makes mention of peoples or places or customs or things such as that, like entire civilizations, when it mentions these things, skeptics have always said, that there's been no one like that before. This is entirely fictitious, that people never occurred, they never existed. No one was known by the name of the Hittites. No one was known by the name of whomever, even doubting the reign of David. And then archaeology, in time, finds it. In time, just like with the city of Ur, in time finds it. And as we made mention last week, it wasn't too many decades ago that you still had skeptics that said that this area where Sodom and Gomorrah, all these 5 cities were supposed to be, that have you looked at that place? It couldn't support civilizations of too big at all. There's hardly anything there that you could survive on. You can't drink water from the Dead Sea. It'll kill you. It's just highly salty, more so than the sea is salt, much more so. But given in time, they begin to find civilizations exactly where the Bible said they would be. Now, we have this explanation. That is the Salt Sea. And this would be a name that the readers in Moses' day would have understood. I know what the Salt Sea is. They would know that. Now we come to verse 12. Verse 4. The first word is 12. Verse 4. 12 years they served Chedorlaomer, and in the 13th year they rebelled. So they've been under the thumb of Chedorlaomer, king of Elam. That's who they've been under. And these 5 cities. And for 12 years, they served him. And the 13th year, they got tired of it. And never mind. They're going to rebel against him. So, in the next year, in the 14th year, Chedorlaomer and the kings that were with him came and attacked the Rephaim in Ashtaroth, Karnaim, the Zuzim in Ham, the Emim in Shava, Kirithaim, and the Horites in the mountains of Seir, as far as El Paran, which is by the wilderness. Then they turned back and came to En Mishpath, that is Kadesh. This is one of those parenthetical statements again, trying to update the names so that the readers know where this is, because these are ancient names, and they would have been ancient names to the people in Moses' day. Where is that? Nobody calls it by that name anymore. Okay, yeah, it's Kadesh. And attacked all the country of the Amalekites and also the Amorites who dwelt in Hazazon Tamar. And the king of Sodom, the king of Gomorrah, the king of Admon, the king of Zeboam, and the king of Bela, that is Zoar, went out and joined together in the battle in the valley of Siddim. So we find out that this involves more nations than just the 4 kings coming from the east and these 5 cities. There's more involved in this. And I'm just going to make mention very quickly. You talk about nation going against nation. It's already happening. It's nothing new. Nation going against nation is not new to the 20th century. Come 1916, 1914, Nothing new whatsoever about nation going against nation. And when Jesus speaks of nation going against nation, it's that single going against single, one nation going against another nation. But here truly is nations, plural, going against nations. They're going to war against each other. Now, Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboim, Zoar, they join in with this. Verse 9, against Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, title king of nations, Amraphel, king of Shinar, and Arioch, king of Elasar, 4 kings against 5. So it's come down to this, 4 against 5. Now, historically, in the research and in the finds of Mesopotamia, because we are talking about nations that are closely associated with Mesopotamian area and going into also what is commonly called Levant, which is Israel and the surrounding region there along the Mediterranean coast. All right, that historically, from the research that has been found concerning writings of the day and historians writing about certain things that happened, we know that there were wars and there were conquests and there were small little empires that began in those days. They were occurring. And there were kings who would conquer a certain land because they could, and they would demand certain tribute from that people. Well, that increases your wealth. That increases your power. And then as they increase, they can go and take someone else, and then someone else. Now, what's going to happen is we have these 4 kings who are, as far as the ancient world is concerned, pretty powerful. Because thus far, they've been victorious. Thus far. But they're about to go against, in just a little bit, against someone who's not a king. Not a king at all. He claims no jurisdiction. He claims no boundary. He has no boundary. He has no land. But he's going to go against them, and he's going to defeat them. But let's go to verse 10. Genesis 14, verse 10. Now the valley of Sodom was full of asphalt pits, and the king of Sodom and Gomorrah fled. Some fell there, and the remainder fled to the mountains. Now, what are asphalt pits? Well, that is a place where you've got to be careful. You really don't want to fall into an asphalt pit. All right. You really don't. If you've ever heard of something like the La Brea tar pits that are in California, where animals of the ancient past fell into them and their bones have been recovered, it is similar to that. This is a dangerous area. You don't want to fall, and this is a bad place. Let's just put it this way. Well, if you're defending the place, it's good. Because you've put some obstacles against your enemy. Nevertheless, we have this valley, and the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah, those 5 cities, they were defeated. Verse 11. Then they took all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah and all their provisions and went their way. So this is what they wanted. These 4 kings, with the first one listed as Amraphel, Arioch, Chedorlaomer, title. They have conquered, and now they have gone in to basically loot the place. And then they're taking people with them, is what they're doing. They're taking people with them. So we go to 11 again. Then they took all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah and all their provisions and went their way. They also took Lot Abram's brother's son who dwelt in Sodom, and his goods, and departed. Yeah, well, he would have goods. He was a very wealthy man. He would have had a lot of cattle. No telling what kind of other wealth he may have had. And things would have been going better for him, being as business-wise, being around populated places such as Sodom was. And so here is their big mistake, is they take Lot. If they had left Lot alone, it's very possible that it wouldn't have attracted Abram's attention at all. That's a bad thing. How's Lot doing? Well, Lot's okay. Okay, well then that's, I guess everything's fine. But they took Lot, and everything's not fine. They took Lot, and Abram is not going to let that stand. He's not going to do that. Verse 13, then one who escaped came and told Abram the Hebrew. Now, that is the first time we get that name, Hebrew. That's the first time. He's referred to by others as Abram the Hebrew. For he dwelt by the terebinth trees in Mamre, the Amorite, brother of Eshcol and brother of Aner, and they were allies with Abram. Now, when Abram heard that his brother was taken captive, he armed his 318 trained servants who were born in his own house and went in pursuit as far as Dan. So this is the first time we get a glimpse into how many men are with Abram. As we said, when we've been going through chapter 12, it seems like it's just a handful of folks that are traveling. Not very many at all. We could name them by name going through there, and it seems like it's just a handful, but evidently it's much more than that. It's many more than that. And here we see where there are 318. They've been born in his household. They've been born with evidently this second generation, perhaps, that has grown up, and they've been trained. They're not trained just dealing with cattle, but they've been trained. Evidently this was part of what Abram did. They were trained servants who were born in his own house and went in pursuit as far as Dan. So they're heading up north. Verse 15, he divided his forces against them by night, and he and his servants attacked them and pursued them as far as Hobah, which is north of Damascus. So this is going quite a number of miles. Quite a number of miles in pursuit of all this. And so they're going, daytime, nighttime, it doesn't matter. They're going against them. Verse 16, so he brought back all the goods and also brought back his brother Lot and his goods, as well as the women and the people. So now we get a little bit more of an understanding of what else they took other than Lot and goods from Sodom and Gomorrah. All right? Because it says women and the people. So there were a lot others, and Abram has destroyed the plans of these kings, and he and his men are coming back with the goods. They're coming back, and Abram is not going to keep them. It's going to be offered to him, but he's not going to keep them because he doesn't want anyone saying that, the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah and Admah, Zeboam, Zoar, that he got wealthy because of them. He got wealthy because they gave him everything, but he's not going to take it. Now, what he is going to do is he's going to take a tenth, and give it to someone rather important and someone we've never heard of before, but will hear of again. Let's continue on. So he brings back Lot, all the goods. This would be a lot of stuff. And also understand, in the ancient world, if you are taking all of this prizes, all of the loot after the spoils of war, you're taking those and you're taking those back home. All right, that requires slow movement. You can't just pack those onto a plane and shoot it over. This requires slow movement. It requires wagons, horses, oxen, most likely. This is slow moving. And so someone who is not hauling such stuff can catch up with a slow-moving train of goods. They can do it. And that's exactly what Abram and his men do. They're able to catch up with it, and they're going to turn those wagons around and bring them back where they came from, and all the people besides. Now verse 17. And the king of Sodom went out to meet him at the valley of Shava, that is, the king's valley. So the king of Sodom wasn't taken. He might have escaped, because it does say some escaped. Or they could have just decided, we don't care anything about you. I doubt that, but it doesn't really matter. Anyway, he hears, he finds out that everything's coming back, and it's Abram that's done it. So he goes out to meet him in the valley of Shava, that is the king's valley. Here again, one of those parenthetical statements. After his return from the defeat of Chedorlaomer and the kings who were with him. Now, we come to verse 18. And 18 introduces us to someone, as an introduction, obviously, we've never heard of this person before. But here is someone who is a bit of a mystery. But here we are, Genesis chapter 14, he's mentioned once by name. Psalm 110 and verse 4, he's mentioned again, once by name. Then when we get into the book of Hebrews, he's mentioned repeatedly by name. And nobody else, no other books mention him at all. None. But here is this mysterious person, because who is this person? If this person was so important, and he is, why haven't we heard about him before now? Well, there's a lot of things that until we get to the narration of it and the importance of it, that there's no need to speak of it. No need until it's important. There's no need. But Abraham knows who this person is, because Abraham is going to take a tenth of the spoil and give it to this man. Verse 18. Then Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was the priest of God Most High. He's not a false priest. He's not a priest of Baal. He's not a priest of Inanna. He's not a priest of E. He's not a priest of Ra. He's not a priest of anybody else. He is a priest of God Most High. So there are priests before the Levitical priesthood. Well, here he is. Here he is a priest. And he is priest of God Most High. This is the Holy Spirit telling us that he is very legitimate. And that he is king of Salem. And he is priest of God Most High. And he blessed him and said, this is Melchizedek blessing Abram. Blessed be Abram of God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth. And blessed be God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hand. And he, that's Abram, gave him, that's Melchizedek, a tithe of all. So he brings back all these goods. What's in it? Whatever a city would have, whatever cities would have. Would there be gold? Most certainly. Silver? Definitely. Would there be other things would there be animals? And there would be various weapons and articles of just clothing? There'd be all kinds of things. But he gives him a tithe that means a tenth of all. So there's some things to be said about this. One, there is a priest that resides in Salem, and we'll get to that in a second, in this ancient past. This is before we get to the law of Moses. Melchizedek is not a descendant of Abram. He can't be. Abram is childless at this point. He cannot be. Melchizedek, who is king of Salem, this king of peace, he is in that Abram understands giving a tithe to him. Has he ever done this before? We don't know. We don't know. But it seems like he knew precisely what to do. Did he just make this tithing up? No, I don't think he did. I don't think he made up that he's going to give a tenth to Melchizedek. I don't think he just made that up. I think he understood that's what he ought to do. He understood that's what he should do because he respects who Melchizedek is. He respects him. Now there's something else that needs to be said. Is not everyone living on the earth in this day, as we've already made mention of this, not everyone living on the earth in that day followed Jehovah. There was paganism. There were pantheons that were being created. There were legends that would be, well, let's just say certain things that would have probably occurred, made into legends, made into myths, then made into gods. Going from, and there's historically all kinds of cultures that have taken someone of the past. That person has been made into a legend, and while they may have done great things in their life, what's brought about in the legends and then in the myths just explodes, and they become like demigods and then into gods. And well, that's what was going on in those days. But also we need to understand that not everyone living in that ancient past did such things. There were some in that ancient past, they worshiped Jehovah. They knew who he was, and they worshiped him. Abram and his family would be a group, and I cannot say for an absolute certainty, just that I have a feeling that the men who are loyal to Abram and staying with him have a very similar attitude. Very similar. Not saying that they did everything right. Obviously, there was contention that went on between the men of Abram and men of Lot. But I have a feeling that they would have been heavily influenced by their employer. Heavily by his goodness. Now, he gives a tithe of all. Now, we go to Salem. He's king of Salem. What is that? That's the ancient name of a city that would be renamed actually several times. But it is Jerusalem. He's king of Salem. That is the very ancient name of Jerusalem. The very ancient name. And here, matter of fact, it keeps part of the name there. Jerusalem, Salem. And so here is this mysterious priest of God Most High, and this is all we get to know about him until we get to the book of Hebrews. Now, let's go to Psalm 110, because we need to. We need to understand how significant this is. Because it is. How incredibly significant. What did we just see? Who was that anyway? And like I said, Genesis mentions his name once by name. And we go from verses 18 to 20, and that's it. Nothing else in Genesis about him. Nothing. And there's nothing between Genesis and Psalm 110 where he's mentioned once. But in an extraordinary way, we could have forgotten all about Melchizedek altogether. Just, he's some mysterious person, priest of God Most High. Okay. He's king of Salem. All right. Forgotten all about him. And then we come to this, Psalm 110, verse 1. We got to start at verse 1. The Lord has said to my Lord. I'm going to do it the way I think it ought to be rendered. Jehovah said to my Lord. David is writing this. A psalm of David is actually how this starts. Jehovah said to my Lord, sit at my right hand till I make your enemies your footstool. Jehovah shall send the rod of your strength out of Zion. Rule in the midst of your enemies. Your people shall be volunteers in the day of your power, in the beauties of holiness. From the womb of the morning you have the dew of your youth. The Lord has sworn. Here is verse 4. Jehovah has sworn and will not relent. You are a priest forever, according to the order of Melchizedek. Now there is a mysterious saying until we get to the book of Hebrews. There is a very mysterious saying until we get to Psalm 110, we would never think too much about Melchizedek. But now in Psalm 110, it's associated with someone extraordinary. A psalm of David. Jehovah said to my Lord, sit at my right hand till I make your enemies your footstool. As Jesus asked the Christ, whose son is he? And the response was David. While that is an answer, and the answer is not false, it's also not the total answer. He is a descendant of David. That is true. But then he quotes Psalm 110:1. Jehovah said to my Lord, sit at my right hand till I make your enemies your footstool. And then he asks, if he is the son of David, if the Christ is the son of David, why does David call him Lord? Because everyone recognized Psalm 110 it could not be David. Why would David call himself my Lord? And who would be the Lord of David? David was king. He's certainly not talking about Saul, because none of this would be accurate about Saul at all. This is nothing like Saul. Saul lived a good old age. He reigned for 40 years. There's nothing youthful about him at all. Aside from that of being a priest forever? No, not Saul. But we have that of the Christ. And the Jews well understood Psalm 110 referred to Jehovah, or Jehovah said to my Lord. Jehovah said to the Christ, said to the Messiah. This is a promise that he has given him. And here we have verse 4, Jehovah has sworn and will not relent. There is no way he's taking this back. No way he's rethinking this. No way is he changing his mind. He's not going to do it. You are a priest forever according to the order of Melchizedek. Now, there is a mystery. This concerns the Christ, and he's going to be a priest forever. And it's according to the order of Melchizedek, which means Melchizedek must really be someone significant. And we get to the book of Hebrews and we find out, yeah, he is someone significant. He is someone. And that Jesus cannot be, under the law of Moses, cannot be a priest, period. Wrong tribe. He's from Judah. The priests under the law of Moses are Levi. Does it matter? Yes, it matters. And we said this earlier in our class concerning Hebrews, that even God in the flesh, as Jesus of Nazareth, has to follow the laws of God. To boil that down, even God must follow the laws of God. Otherwise, that's called a corrupt leader. That's called someone who binds things on others, and when it comes time to it, that, such as with Jesus of Nazareth, living on this earth under those laws, if he breaks those laws, what does that make him? That makes him a sinner. That makes him a hypocrite. That makes him, as being part of a Godhead, binding these laws on humanity. When he comes down to be a part of humanity, he's underneath those laws. Completely underneath those laws. And he doesn't break a single one. Tempted in all ways like we are, yet without sin. Also the book of Hebrews. Now, Jesus is, and we won't go into the book of Hebrews because we have a class specifically on that, but it tells us what the meaning is, and might I add, concerning Psalm 110 and verse 4, you are priests forever under the order of Melchizedek. That is a locked door, a mystery you cannot solve until you allow God to give you the key for that locked door, or to give you the answer for that mystery. Forever a locked door. You cannot know what that means. And until we get to the book of Hebrews, we couldn't really know what that means. We could know that applied to the Christ. We can know that. And the Jews understood that. They understood it. And when Jesus says, why then does David call him Lord? They didn't argue about Psalm 110, saying that had nothing to do with the Christ. They didn't argue with him at all. They were quiet, and they wouldn't question him anymore. Okay? It's a losing proposition. It's a losing game. You try to trap Christ in his words. You try to trap him under Scripture. You try to trap him logically. You can't. One, he's got the truth on his side. Therefore, he's got logic on his side. He's got Scripture on his side. He's got God on his side. He has all those things on his side. You go against him, you're going against a very, very, very powerful force. And they decided, okay, enough. We cannot continue to do this because we're losing against him. Now, we have come to the end of our class this morning. Next week, we will continue in chapter 14, going into the life of Abram. And very soon, he will be given the name of Abraham. And Sarai's name will also be changed to Sarah. And one may think at a point in time that they have been named ironically. What does that mean? Given names that does not describe them in the least, doesn't describe them at all. But as we see, yep, it does describe them because of what is going to be occurring in their life. I want to thank everybody for being with us, and once again, we'll hopefully continue next week. Thank you.